Chairman Bingaman, Ranking Member Murkowski, and members of the committee. I'm Cathy Foerster, the chair of the Alaska Oil and Gas Conservation Committee, the regulatory agency that oversees oil, gas, and geothermal exploration and production activities for the state of Alaska. Of the 136 legacy wells, only 16 have been properly plugged and abandoned to Alaska standards. I'm here representing the governor of the state of Alaska, who has asked me to tell you that we expect the federal government to obey federal and state laws by cleaning up each and every one of these wells and doing it promptly. We have serious problems with the 120 wells that have not been properly addressed. Unfortunately, the Interior Department has only provided us data for the downhole condition of 61 of those wells, and 55 wells we've got the surface condition for. As much as I would love to talk about all 120 wells, I will limit my discussion to those wells for which I have up-to-date data. But we have no reason to believe that the remaining wells don't have similar problems. A well that's plugged in and abandoned to Alaska's requirements has surface revegetation and remediation sufficient that the site blends in with the natural environment. Within a few summers, there should be no indication that there was ever a well there. All but 2 of the well sites for which we have surface data have some man-made blemish marring the surface, and some of these, in my opinion, should be considered crimes against the environment. 26 wells have been left open to the atmosphere and were left filled with drilling fluids. Several of them also encountered oil or gas. There has likely been significant contamination of the surrounding tundra and atmosphere by these various fluids escaping into the environment. Wood, metal, plastic, glass, and concrete debris litter 44 of the sites. 49 have metal piping sticking out of the ground, and 10 have open cellars, creating hazards for human and animal travelers. 17 wells were left filled with diesel. Diesel is the fluid that the EPA has prohibited operators from putting into wells. And these wells are also unremediated at the surface. They're environmental eyesores at best and potential sources for hazardous fluid contamination at worst. 2 of the wells leak hydrocarbon gases. 3 can no longer be found. 29 are partially revegetated at the surface, but have unknown downhole conditions, making them landmines. The Interior Department considers these wells no longer of a concern because they're fixed at the surface. Some of these wells do still have surface remediation issues, in our opinion. Let's leave the surface for a minute and look at the downhole problems. In front of you should be well sketches for some actual legacy wells. We couldn't make them into posters. I apologize for that. For each pair of well sketches, the sketch on the left shows the well's existing condition, and the sketch on the right shows what it would look like if it were properly plugged. First is the East Simpson test well number 2. At least 18 wells are in this condition. On the left, we see the existing situation, a well that was drilled to about 7,500 feet, cased to a little below 6,400 feet, and has a series of cement plugs staged with drilling mud. Above that last plug, the well is left filled with diesel. But there's no guarantee that the diesel is still there after 32 years of neglect. On the right, we see the same well if it were plugged properly. The diesel would be safely removed and replaced with a water-based fluid. Then a cement plug would be placed at the surface and the pipe cut off below ground level with a marker plate identifying the well in case of future excavations. The second well, Simpson Core Test number 27, a well that is representative of at least 28 wells that were drilled deep but cased shallow. The Interior Department considers these wells to be of low concern. You might ask why we're worried about decades-old holes like this that the Interior Department isn't concerned about. Well, they re-entered well just like this. Earlier this year, the Umiat number 6. However, when they got below the casing, they lost control of the well and it started to flow on them. That's called a blowout. Fortunately, they were able to regain control of the well. But that's why we worry about these holes. For the sake of time, I'll skip over the other 2 wells that I was planning to discuss, but I want to make a brief comment on one of them. It's the Ico Bay number 1, which the local residents, the natives that live in a village nearby, have nicknamed the whistling well because they can hear it leaking natural gas constantly. The Interior Department has no documented standards for plugging and abandonment procedures, but the state of Alaska does, and the Interior Department is required by law to comply with those standards. The Interior Department is, however, very clear on the time limits for plugging a well. It must be done within 1 year. Extensions can be granted, but only for good reasons. And lack of budget and lack of interest are not good reasons. Senators, I can't express my disappointment and shame at the Interior Department's failure to address these environmental ticking time bombs. These 120 messes, it's long past time for them to take responsibility and clean them all up. My agency knows exactly what needs to be done, and we stand ready to help address these wells now. Thank you for allowing me to testify. I am available to answer questions.
Well, thank you all for